Comic Book Savant, Reel to Reel, Retro Movie Review. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. In this episode, we're going to be doing a retro movie review. I've been doing a series currently with the retro movie review, starting off with the original Superman series of movies starring Christopher Reeve. We did the original Superman movie. We did Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. And in that, at one point, because I bought these movies digitally, they had both versions of the movie in the digital copy, but somehow and now that's not the case. Or I think I viewed the movie when I actually still had physical media and I had Blu-ray and it had both versions on the same disc. And it could be that, and I was getting the two confused. Because when I switched over to digital, a lot of these movies I did own in physical media, but in the switch over, certain things got lost. That's why my fellow Spinner Rack Bros, Heath, always talks about the importance of physical media. This is one of the cases. So when I thought I was going to originally review Superman 2 for you guys, it ended up being the Donner cut, and it did not have both versions, which was weird because surprisingly to me, and I mentioned it in the review when I reviewed the first Superman movie, that they actually had a director's cut that I didn't know anything about that was included in that digital version, but the same courtesy wasn't extended to Superman 2. So it bothered me because I had, I guess, far as at the point the Donner cut came out, about 10 or so years ago now, that was the only version that I've had watched because I wanted to see the differences, and I didn't know it was so hard to find the actual original theatrical cut of Superman 2. So I had to do some digging in between. I think I ended up having to buy a whole nother copy digitally of the theatrical cut, or I saw it on HBO Max. I don't know. I went digging for it because it just bothered me, because the whole purpose of doing these retro reviews were the theatrical films. Though I will get into it later, I do think the Donner cut is the better cut of the movie. And I did not know how much I've forgotten this original theatrical cut, though it was the one I grew up on and saw many times. It was a staple, like back in the day when you had cable like HBO and Showtime and all that. When I was a kid, like Superman 2 was a movie that was always on, like when you would come home from school or on the weekends. They played it so much, so it was just something that always kind of played in the background. So it was crazy how much I had truly forgot about the stark differences between Superman 2 and Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. But I digress. Let's break down the particulars about the movie. Superman 2 was credited being directed by Richard Donner as well as Richard Lester. If you're unfamiliar with the drama that was Superman, Richard Donner was fired like halfway through the filming of Superman 1, and they were kind of shooting both movies at the same time. He was fired because of a ballooning budget and various other things that are well noted. Like, it's a whole, I think, if you kind of watch the Donner cut, they talk about a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, how, Donner was fired, and excuse me, I think Richard Lester was like his assistant director or something like that, that came in to finish the movie because the budget just kept ballooning and getting out of control, and was taking longer and longer for the movie to be finished. So it was, just a typical Hollywood craziness behind the scenes. Excuse me. Excuse me. The writers credited to the script is Mario Puzo, David Newman, Leslie Newman, and Tom Mankiewicz. And the summary is as follows. Superman agrees to sacrifice his powers to start a relationship with Lois Lane, unaware that 3 Kryptonian criminals he had inadvertently released are conquering Earth. So we have the same cast that we had from the Donner cut, just kind of used differently. So we still have Marlon Brando as Jor-El. We have Susanna York as Laura. We have Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, Christopher Reeve as Superman and Clark Kent, Ned Beatty as Otis, Jackie Cooper as Perry White, Margaret Kidder as Lois Lane, Jack O'Halloran as Nan, Terrence Stamp as General Zod, Mark McClure as Jimmy Olsen, Sarah Douglas as Ursa, and Valerie Perrine as Eve Tessmacher. Excuse me. So, though the same cast of characters for the Donner cut, when I get into more of the details, they were definitely used a lot differently, or the cuts that were used were definitely because a lot of things were kind of from the massive shoot. Different things were recycled or used differently from the first movie to the second. The kind of things that tip off the movie with the villains being released was in the end of the first movie, and they actually do something that's kind of that gave it a real serial feel. They actually did a recap at the beginning of this movie showing how the first movie ended, just in case you didn't see it going into the second one. So it gave it like that, the old style kind of serials feel, like last episode on, kind of deal. So in the original cut, when Superman redirected one of the missiles, it goes into space, it goes deep into space, and it actually hits the Phantom Zone shard that the three criminals that we were introduced to in the beginning of Superman 1, where you get the whole sequence with Terrence Stamp, with General Zod and Ursa and Nan being where Jor-El has them on trial and they sentence them to the Phantom Zone. It just so happens when he was saving the world in the first movie, Superman, that rocket drifts far enough into space where it comes into collision with the Phantom Zone shard that then releases Zod and the Zon, Ursa, and Nan, which then the events kind of mirror similarly to what we get in the movie with them drifting along in space. We get a more prolonged scene of them kind of gathering, understanding that they do have powers, they can fly, they find their way to the moon. Find their way to the moon, and then we get the standard opening of the film when we're introduced to those characters. So you get a little, scene where they're released, they're kind of gathering themselves, and they're trying to be, oh, where do we go? Oh, here's a planet, let's go towards this way, which is leading them towards Earth. Now we have a totally different opening sequence of the movie from what we got in the Donner cut, where this is a whole sequence in Paris at the Eiffel Tower, where it's a hostage situation. Lois is involved. Superman goes to save Lois, and it's a totally whole different vibe and totally different from the original opening. Also, it's a different second act of the film, where the Donner cut has Marlon Brando in the present. They swap him out with Susanna York, which is Laura, which is Superman's mother, and they edit down the scene to barely nothing, because we get to the second act of the movie where, Superman or Clark, pleads with his father in the Donner cut, which is now the mother. And again, it's a way longer sequence, which displays way better acting from Christopher Reeves in the Donner cut. They totally edited this scene down. It's so watered down. It doesn't have the emotion in it, and it just so in this original theatrical cut, it makes Christopher Reeve's performance so uneven. It just wastes his performance, and I didn't know how much it did till now, seeing it after recently watching the Donner cut to do that retro review on it, how bad that this movie was. Even though as a kid, my memories of the movie as a kid watching the theatrical release of this movie was really, my favorite character in the whole movie was Terrence Stamp as General Zod. Like, to this day, I still love him in this movie. I still love Terrence Stamp. Period. If you've never seen the Limey, him as an old man is still just as cool. And that kneel before Zod just line and how just arrogant he was in this movie. I don't know. It just made me love him as a villain. That was always my favorite part. But now as being an adult and going back and being such a film fan that I am, and I never understood as a kid how good Christopher Reeves was as an actor. And I really appreciate these movies too until now. As doing these retro reviews, which I'm glad you guys in the community suggested me doing something like this, because you can always have one memory, of how something was for you at that point in time. But me as a 6, 7, 8 year old watching this for the first time, as me as a 44, 45 year old man now watching these movies, they hit a little different, and certain nuances and things I can understand way more, way better now than I could then. And I appreciate that. So it's really fun doing these, and I look forward. We have so many older movies to go. This is just like the beginning of it all. But it's a shame, like I said, just seeing the whole second act where he has the conversation. She gives him the option that he can give up his powers. Like I said, it's not necessarily that it was a super long scene, but it was just so much meat there and so much emotion that how it's edited, it's just so abbreviated, and I don't know the specific run times, but let's say if it was a 10-minute scene in the Donner cut, it's like a 2-minute scene in the theatrical cut, which makes that scene lose so much significance when you dwindle it down to so much, so it doesn't carry the same potency. In the Donner cut, another thing that was different too, in the Donner cut, the Fortress of Solitude was totally destroyed at the end of the movie. In the theatrical cut, it was not. The edit of the film definitely feels choppy and jumpy. There's a lot of jump cutting. It really is a hard movie to follow throughout how choppy the editing was in this version of the film. Again, because of these choppy edits where they kind of let certain things develop with storyline, especially with Christopher Reeve's performance, it just feels so uneven. Again, the massive edits to a lot of his screen time just felt like it was a real shame. Also in the edits of the movie, Eve Tessmacher's appearance is totally lessened by the film's edits as well. So a lot of her stuff got put on the cutting room floor that in the Donner cut, not that she was given so much, she probably was more prominent in Superman compared to Superman 2. But we got to see in the Donner cut that she was just as much an equal to Lex than like a lackey, and they made it feel in the theatrical cut that she was a lackey more so than an intellectual equal. Maybe she wasn't as smart, but she wasn't dumb, but she wasn't Otis by any sense of the imagination. She was a very smart woman on her own accord, which gets lost in this cut, which again is really a shame. After seeing the theatrical cut after all these years, I definitely have to say it's by far inferior to the Donner cut. It was weird seeing just two cuts of a movie, how it could drastically change one's opinion on a movie. So just breaking down the ratings of the film, I didn't want to rehash other points. Those were the main points that were taken out of watching it, coming off of doing the other review for you guys for the actual Donner cut to the theatrical cut. It is probably it is a night and day difference if you watch them back to back, and I don't know which one to say. I guess maybe if you watch them in sequence, watch Superman 1, then maybe watch the theatrical cut of Superman 2, then watch the Donner cut, so you can see how bad one was and see the improvements, and maybe it'll hit different. I'm not sure, but I guess maybe if you see the true theatrical cut to the improved cut, that you will leave with a better taste in your mouth, instead of like me, I have a more sour taste in my mouth because I saw the better version first. So I'm just like, oh man, I hope things get better with Superman 3, which I don't have fond memories of Superman 3. So, but that's the next one on tap to review. So that'll be coming soon. So with my ratings, like I always do, I say the acting for this film was about a 5 out of 10, not due to the actors, due to the edits of the film that really just takes really good performances and just dwindles them to nothing. Casting was a 10 out of 10. I talked about that in the first review of Superman 2. Direction was a 5 out of 10 because it's a mess, and the director had some say so in the edits, I would imagine. So I would have to give the directing 5 out of 10. And they recycled a lot of Donner stuff, though he was no longer working on the film. He had shot so much film. So yeah, about that. That was crazy. Special effects for the time frame, I'll say they were like a 7 out of 10 because this is the early 80s when this movie was done. And it's a movie of that time. That's more than clear when you watch it. And the story, I would say it was a 5 out of 10 because it's way more coherent in the Donner cut. It makes a lot more sense. The whole flow and the story is just so choppy. It's hard to follow because it's very, very jumpy. You get very little context in what you do in the Donner cut. So I just got to give it a 5 out of 10. So overall, that equals out to a 6.5 out of 10. I can't recommend you watch, like, this is not a movie outside of this context of just comparing it to the other movie that I would ever watch again. I would, from going forward now on, the Donner cut is my Superman 2 version of Superman 2 that I will watch going forward after doing this. Unless you ask me to do something like this again in a few years, maybe I would watch it in that circumstance, but that would probably be it. But that's all I have for you guys for this episode. Thank you so much for your continued support and being here for me. As always, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Comic Book Savant. You can also go to the website, comicbooksavant.com. We have the Facebook group. If you, it's a link on the website. And if you just go to facebook.com/Comic Book Savant, I have a link to it as well. It's the Comic Book Savant Society, or wait, is it the Savant Society? See, this is why I don't know, and that's why I have to link up. The Comic Book Savant Society. I get it mixed up because we changed the name. Was one thing we changed it. So Comic Book Savant Society. You can search for Comic Book Savant Society on Facebook for groups, and it should come right up, and you can join. It's a public group, so you can join right up. And we do a lot of great conversations there. So if you want to join in, it's just a bunch of comic fans talking comics and shooting the breeze and getting to know one another. So it's a good open forum. So if you have a moment, check that out. But as always, you guys, please stay safe out there. Take care. Until next time, I'll talk to you soon.